Don't work on this mythical Hindu-Muslim unity. It's not going to work. You're actually feeding a monster. That is his language. Now we have to stand up because they were inviting the Afghans to invade Bharat, to dislodge the British. People in that period were already realizing that you're moving in a dangerous direction. And those voices were snubbed and stifled, just as they are being today. And they were being told that they must be committed to mental asylums for hoping to achieve independence. This was the language of all the leading stalwarts of the Congress. Vande Mataram was converted to Vande Mata Pitarau. The Pitarau there was the British flag.
Thank you for writing this wonderful book.
Thank you.
I'm going through my re-education. It's not easy. And
is the language better than the first book?
Panza?
Is the language better than the first book? I've tried a lot.
Oh, this is harder. The first book was a breeze because it's a first education. This is re-education, so it's harder.
Okay.
So I have a question going back. There's a Lal Bal Pal, the so-called branded extremists, as against the moderates. I wanted to know from you, I've been searching for it, I can't find it. Is there any evidence or any indication of their views on what was already a nascent two-nation theory? It was already emerging at the time. There's always this difference between the moderates and the extremists, so-called extremists, that whether you want Purna Swaraj or Dominion status. Dominion status, yeah. I wanted to know from you, I can't find it in your book as I'm coursing through it, what was their view? Did they want this country to stay together, or were they accepting a split, or they wanted a split?
Now, which section of the book have you reached so far? Pardon? Which section of the second book have you reached so far? Because I have specifically spoken of articles by Lala Lajpat Rai on him making a case for Hindu nationalism, very clearly, because he was alive to the growing threat of the two-nation theory. And Aurobindo Ghosh, both of them, very clearly. In the book, I've actually given their own articles. You'll see that. In fact, you see, the call for partition hadn't started until 1924. But a call for a nation within a nation had already started. Yes, correct. So, in principle, two-nation theory could have led to two different situations. One is existence of two nations within one territory and being treated separately, or the creation of two separate states. So the first attempt was to accommodate a peace to no end possible to satisfy this nation within a nation. And that had already started receiving a lot of pushback. So much so, Lala Lajpat Rai is berating and castigating the moderates for saying, don't work on this mythical Hindu-Muslim unity, it's not going to work. You're actually feeding a monster. That is his language. Nobody wants to talk about what Lala Lajpat Rai's opinions were on this particular subject.
You put that in the book?
Yes, it's there. I've cited the articles also around the time period. He was so dead set against it that he swore never to speak in Urdu on a public platform.
This is the natural language of Punjab.
Exactly. Because he said this is not the natural language of Punjab, it's the imposed language of Punjab. Not just him. The Maharaja of Nabha is fighting with the British for imposing Urdu in Punjab at the behest of the Muslim League. Now, how do these voices ultimately move towards their opposition to the partition? I will know only when I enter the third book. But their opposition to the nation, let's say they are not opposing the two-nation theory, they accepted it as a reality. They are asking the Congress to not indulge and accommodate the call for a separate nation. You see what I'm saying? For that matter, among the moderates, Gokhale openly accepts during the discussion on communal electorates for Muslims. We are two different nations, nothing can be done about it. Accepts it. He bats for separate electorates for Muslims. In his correspondence, he is clearly saying it. In his cogitations before the Imperial Legislative Council, ILCD, Imperial Legislative Council debates, he is making this point. They accept it. The difference is, if you accept it, you will say, so what? You will not get a separate treatment. or others will say, "ठीक है, we'll give you separate treatment." That is the actual distinction. That would ultimately become the distinction between the Savarkarite position and the Gandhian position as you go along. One says, so what? Why am I going to indulge this here? This creature of Khilafat does not deserve to be treated specially with kid gloves, at least not in this Punya Bhumi. That's where he starts discussing the concept of a Punya Bhumi. And then says, how do you define a Punya Bhumi? Then he starts writing about it, because you see, all these people, after having gone through the Khilafat experience, say it's now time to be very vocal about this. Because you have actually, let's use Kamal Hassan's language from the movie Heram, Pachai Chediku Tandi Potache. That's exactly what he was referring to there. And therefore, I might as well deal with it. This diversion, or let's say this deviation in their positions, will come later. That's why I've stopped it at December 1924. But the reactions of the others to the Khilafat movement will gradually emerge. And now you will see why the Hindutva movement became effectively a serious reactionary product or a resistance product of what had become the outcome of the Khilafat movement. Because now they said, now we have to stand up, because they were inviting the Afghans to invade Bharat, to dislodge the British. The Ali brothers delivered a speech in Erode addressing a significant population of Maplas or Moplas, specifically saying, I will invite the Emir of Afghanistan to invade Bharat, with Gandhi being present there. And Gandhi was being asked, how did he even tolerate this? Do you know what we are being told? Lala Lajpat Rai and Bipin Chandra Pal go after Gandhi to say, and even Madan Mohan Malviya is saying, what were you doing there? I am not going to tolerate the exodus of one colonizer for another worse colonizer. This is one of the reasons that the Ali brothers ultimately get arrested in Lahore for sedition. And during the Lahore trial, what do the Ali brothers say as far as their allegiance to the native country, or let's say the adopted homeland, and their commitment to the faith? Brilliant statement. You should read it. I've extracted his statements from his testimony before the court. As I said, actually you can't count on me. So, 1924, the stage was set. Now, I can say the stage is set because I'm looking at it 100 years, let's say, it's a hindsight bias. But the best part is, people in that period were already realizing that you're moving in a dangerous direction. And those voices were snubbed and stifled, just as they are being today. Hence the connection between the past and the present. It's a 100-year cycle that's repeating itself. I don't think they were offering their services to the empire hoping for independence, because until then the discussion of independence was not even on the table. Until 1924, which is where the second book ends, their fight is for equal treatment at par with Australia, New Zealand and Canada as proud colonies of the empire. They were not asking for independence one bit. Nowhere. The ones who were asking for independence were branded extremists and nationalists. And nationalist was being used as a cuss word even then. And they were being told that they must be committed to mental asylums for hoping to achieve independence. This was the language of all the leading stalwarts of the Congress. Sri M.K. Gandhi's political mentor used the word lunatic for people who were asking for Purna Swaraj. This was his language for Lala Lajpat Rai, Bipin Chandra Pal, Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Sri Aurobindo Ghosh. These were people who were called the extremists within the Congress. So the divide was between moderates and extremists, and the nationalists versus liberals. That was the language used. The liberals wanted to be part of the empire. The nationalists wanted to be free of the empire. Go figure. This is the origin of liberalism in this country. And it continues to be so, because it continues to serve the interests of New York Times and Washington Post. So my point is that I'd be very, very careful and wary of using freedom movement and independence movement for that particular period. And I'd be careful about who is it being used in the context of. The better part of the Congress was not batting for independence. This is not a political rhetoric. This is there, and I've reproduced all their annual proceedings. Vande Mataram was converted to Vande Mata Pitarau. The Pitarau there was the British flag. And people were going about circulating these pamphlets. Amma, Appa. That's the language that they were using. And they were proudly saying this. The first conclave of, so Indian National Congress was not a party. It was a political platform where all like-minded people would meet. The party under the umbrella of which they met was the Indian Political Union, IPU. So when they met, how did they meet? Why is it that A.O. Hume has a role to play in this? Why is the British man taking an interest in this? What reports did he have access to in terms of intelligence reports that he decided that I need to create a safety valve because we are looking at a situation that is equal to or worse than the 1857 mutiny? The best part is, the literature that I've relied on this particular subject, on this particular phase, is both left and right in that particular sense. R.C. Majumdar and S.R. Mehrotra, who's a communist historian, both of them are saying the same thing. And until the 1960s, or even mid-1950s, communists and the Congress had a love-hate relationship. How did they get so cozy? You'll have to read it further. I'll explain that subsequently later. But the point is, the origin of liberalism in this country was pro-colonial in nature. Now, what you make of it, I leave it to you. And the clawing patriotism that they displayed, it's positively embarrassing. It's with the zeal of a new convert that they embraced it, and it makes for very embarrassing read. No wonder whether it's the Japanese or anybody else basically said, Indians, sorry, you're a slave race, you don't know how to fight. And it's because of the representation of this particular group, which was projected as the mainstream group.